need to be interviewed,
Yeah.
tell him.
Okay.
Tell me, I'll tell him.
Okay.
But what, you know,
So he's going to do more interviews.
As
That's
many
how
as
I
I
Local,
can.
so can you travel? Did they pay for your travel? Because I got some in DC area.
I may go up there to see Rex, because Rex is Rex is coming down in September.
Oh, you haven't finished Rex yet, right?
Well, no, he's been done. He wants me to do him again, but I don't know if I can justify it.
Yeah.
Because he wants to,
He wants to redo?
yeah, he
No,
wants a
redo.
redo, because the person who did him, these are release forms that have to be,
yeah.
I'll let you read
That's
through
keeping,
those.
that's keeping the lawyers happy.
You
Right.
gotta say, I authorize you to use my
Right, that's
information.
exactly right. Okay,
So in the library,
Yes.
so when I bring my grandkids up to UTA,
yes.
I know where the Hall of Honor is. Where is
Yes.
this is gonna be in the library where?
It's going to be posted online.
Online.
It's Mavericks Veterans Voices.
It's what you watched of Orlando.
I
That's
do.
where they're, that's where,
Oh, that's where it'll be?
that's where they're posted.
But, okay.
My wife went to DBU, that's why I carried her DBU pen, not because I'm a traitor.
Dallas
There you go.
Baptist.
I have to carry Texas Tech stuff, man. It's terrible.
He wears it too. It is not terrible. It makes you look amazing.
All right. So,
Okay.
we are ready now,
Ready,
right?
let's go.
Right, okay. Let me make sure. All right, you're where you want to be.
I'm warm up.
All right, because if you start moving back, it's going to screw up everything. So,
You ready?
all right.
Okay.
Okay, ready. All right.
It's still the 10th.
It's still the tape. Thank you. He knows that that's when I screw up. That is every time. Every time. All right, here we go.
Let's do it.
This is Joe Carpenter. Today is July the 10th, 2021, and I am interviewing Axel Martinez for the first time. This interview is taking place at the home of Axel Martinez in Somerset, Texas. This interview is sponsored by the College of Liberal Arts and is part of the Maverick Veterans Voices Project. Thank you for allowing us in your home.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the opportunity to recognize the UTA Maverick veterans.
Thank you. Where are you from originally, and what can you tell me about your growing up?
Okay, so I'm a military brat. My father was in the military, both my parents are Puerto Rican, so I am Puerto Rican. My father was in the military and was stationed throughout the world, so every 2 to 3 years we moved to a different location. And so he settled down after Vietnam. He came to Fort Hood, Texas to be assigned to the 1st Cavalry Division. And this is where he decided to retire. So we moved from Puerto Rico to Texas in 1970 and been here for a long time. So 1970 I was in the 7th grade at that time.
Okay.
And we attended Grand Street Junior High School in Killeen, Texas. And then, of course, Killeen High School, and then, of course, the University of Texas at Austin.
Killeen High School,
Kangaroos, Killeen Kangaroos.
yes, my wife was the competitor high school.
Which were?
I don't remember, but they used to serve kangaroo meat at the local
Oh,
McDonald's.
not during my time, I didn't.
Right, okay, that's what I've been told.
Yeah, those are stories.
Yes.
Everybody has one.
Yeah. So were you involved in ROTC in high school?
Yes, I was in the junior ROTC. I was interested because I have an older brother that's 2 years older than me, Luis Martinez, and he was in the ROTC program. My father helped him a lot. And so growing up, I'd see him with his uniform and getting ready for inspection and all that. And so that's when I took interest in it.
Okay. And tell me about your father's service. What did your father do in the military?
Okay, my father was an infantryman, and he worked with the 81 millimeter mortars. And so it was mortar with 11 Charlies to the west. And so he served 20 years in the military. He was assigned to Mannheim, Germany, in the 8th Infantry Division. And so that's where my two brothers were born, Jose and Luis. And then he was assigned to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, that's where I was born.
Okay.
Then from there, we went to Fort Carson, Colorado, where he served in the 4th Infantry Division. And then after that, he got sent to Vietnam, so we moved to Puerto Rico. So there was my mother's parents in Puerto Rico. And when he returned from Vietnam, that's when he got assigned to the 1st Cavalry Division in Fort it, and that's what brought us to Texas.
And that's, there you are, or here you are. Right?
Yes.
Your brothers, did you have any sisters?
No sisters, just two brothers.
Just two brothers. Did they serve as well?
No, I'm the only one that
Only one.
served, yes.
Okay.
We all were interested in the military, but I'm the only one that served.
So why did you choose to attend University of Texas at Arlington?
Okay, so to be truthful about that, it wasn't the university that attracted me. It was an organization on campus
Okay.
that attracted me. So when I was in high school, they would conduct in the summer military drill clinics, and the Sam Houston Rifles were the ones that were sponsoring that drill clinic. And so I would attend the drill clinic as a high school student, and that's when I was very impressed with the organization, how well it was organized and how sharp they looked in their military uniforms, and I knew I was going to be military. So that's when I found out that, that's where I wanted to go. University of Texas Arlington to become a member of the Sam Houston Rifles. That's what drove me.
Now, you were part of a competition when you were with the Sam Houston Rifles at UTA.
Yes.
You and General Simpson, if I recall.
Yes.
And that was a two-man competition, which was a little bit different from what they had done previously.
Well,
Tell me a
yeah,
little bit
let's
about
find out a
that.
bit. So real quick on General Simpson. So General Simpson and I, we met in 1970
Okay.
in the 7th grade.
Oh, wow.
And so we did the 7th grade all the way through high school together. And then when we graduated from high school, we both were really interested in the Sam Houston Rifles. So I had a vehicle at that time. And so I said, let's just go. And so went to his house, packed his bags, went to my house, we packed my bags, and Lester and I drove up to the University of Texas at Arlington, and we went down for the 4th of July parade in Arlington, Texas.
Wow.
And we participated in that parade.
Is that right?
And then we stayed up there at the Jody house. They had like an apartment where all the Jodys were. So we stayed with them until Lester and I found an apartment, and we moved into the Alpha Delta apartments together. And then that's when it all started.
Wow, that's a great story.
So we started, marching on the drill team. So one of the things, Lester and I were on the high school drill team too, the Killeen Kangaroos. And on the high school drill team, we participated in a lot of competitions, but never won a single one. And so our standard level wasn't very high in terms of overall team performance. And so when we went to the Sam Houston Rifles, our very first competition, it was in El Paso. I'll never forget this day because there's some very influential people in my life. And one of them is Andy Connell, sitting right over here. He was a ranger when I was in college as a freshman. So he was a big stud on campus. And I'm like, no, I got to find out what that is because I want to be a stud too.
Okay.
So I actually, the year after he came back as a ranger, then I went to ranger school the year right after that. And I was a big stud. So we were the studs together at the same time. But there was another guy, Orlando Reyes, also, who influenced my life in terms of being competitive. Because coming out through high school, we never won a competition. We just won individual performances, but not team performances. And I was satisfied with that because that's what the standard was. And everybody saw us how great we were and all that. But when we got to college and we went to our first competition in El Paso, we actually got second place in inspection phase. We got first place in basic phase, we got first place in fancy phase, and we got first place overall. Suited and ended up having to go, and then I found out what it was all about when I got into the country.
I see.
Yeah, so, and it's declassified all now, so, but bottom line was that the country of El Salvador was under a civil war at the time, and we were supporting the government. And so we were providing aviation assets during that operation. And we had our Special Forces military advisors. And my mission was to put the advisors in and bring them out, especially in the event of an attack, because it was a classified operation, nobody was supposed to know about it. So if we had an American killed in El Salvador at the time, that's not good publicity. So my job was to come in and attack and evacuate them out. So it was a tactical maneuver to come in and pull them out.
What kind of helicopters were you flying?
I was flying UH-1Hs at that time.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was my first exposure to combat, and in fact, we got combat credit for our assignment there. It was my first close encounter with death. And, being afraid, instead of talking about it, having to do it.
Right.
You'd fly into these, what we call landing zones, and so they were hot landing zones, you had to go in there, and you could see you could see, so on the M60 machine gun, like every 6 bullets is a laser bullet. And so all you do is you just see like fireworks going in, and you have to fly into there and get that American out of there. So that was interesting.
Yeah, I imagine. After that, after your experience in El Salvador, where else did you serve?
Right. So I was actually serving in the Second Army Division in Fort Hood,
Right.
with duty in El Salvador.
Right.
So when I came back from El Salvador, it was a year later. Actually, my grandkids were sitting over here with us. Their father was born during that mission.
Oh.
And I was actually authorized to come home for the birth of my youngest child, Anthony. And so I came down, they gave me 5 days. So it took me 2 days to get here from El Salvador. So when I got here, I had to take my wife to the hospital. We had the baby, and then I had to get her back to the hospital because I had to fly back for the mission. So I got to see my baby born, Anthony, and so that was interesting. And then I said, and I had to go back to the mission. So
How long were you in El Salvador?
I was there for 6 months then.
Okay.
And that was, back in those days, if the Army wanted you to have a family, they would have issued.
You're right.
So that's how it
I've heard
was.
that
Changed
before, yeah.
completely now, but that's how it was.
Yeah. What did you do after that?
So I got back and went to the advanced course. So I was in the very first advanced course of aviation, because aviation had just become a branch.
Right.
And then after that, I went to Panama. I was assigned to Panama. And I first got there, I was a company XO, and then I became a company commander of my own company, which was switched to aviation aircraft. I went from flying the UH-1, I went to Fort Rucker, and I got trained in flying the CH-47 at Chinooks.
Right.
And then we formed a Chinook company in Panama. And we're talking 1986, 1990, something over there. And so I was there for Operation Just Cause. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's my second exposure to combat. And that really enlightened me a lot, because I was a commander. Now I'm in charge of troops. We're going to have to go on missions. It's a little different when you're actually the one going in and doing the mission, to having to tell people, okay, you're assigned to this mission, here's your mission, you got to go execute this mission. So it's a complete different level of concern, different level of responsibility. Because when you're responsible for yourself, that's one thing, but when you're responsible for other people's lives, that brings a lot of interest. And so I got a lot of exposure to that. Now, even though the war was pretty short, I mean, it wasn't over 30 days. Originally, it was only 30 days. It was pretty aggressive. I mean, the United States Army came in full force. And so I got full exposure to death and destruction. And so that was pretty traumatic. For a young captain, as young as I was. The interesting thing about it was when I PCS to Panama, it was a PCS with family, so I was able to bring my family with me. But as President Bush #1 was in command, he was going to make a tough decision and knew it. So we were authorized to return our family early to the United States.
I see.
So we were very strongly encouraged to return our families. So we did that, returned our families, and then we went back, and then that's when he initiated the action against Mr. Manuel Noriega.
Right.
Yeah, from Panama. Basically took him.
And I do remember very well.
That was in 1989.
Yeah.
So now I am going around with 2 combat tours, and nobody else has got in it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I was kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, because all this fun stuff that Andy and all this stuff, that happened later. This is 1989, and I already, Grenada, I think some of the guys got exposed to Grenada.
Right.
That was the only show in town.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, I had my fill, so to speak, in terms of engaging in aggressive actions with other people.
Now tell me about switching from the UH-1 to the Chinook.
Yes,
That?
that's called a transition.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to fly the fastest helicopter in United on the inventory. And everybody thought it was the Black Hawk. Yeah, it's not. It's the CH-47.
Is
The
that
problem is the CH-47 is a lot larger aircraft. And it's a medium lift aircraft. It can carry up to 50,000 pounds. And so you know, I was the battalion S4, so the logistics officer for our battalion at the time. And then the battalion commander called me in and said he wanted to give me a command, and he wanted to form a Chinook company because he had only a platoon at the time. So I was the very first commander of Charlie Company, the Sugar Bears. Our organization formed out of Alaska and transferred over to Vietnam.
Is that right?
Yeah. So that's my transition to a better aircraft, much stronger, much powerful aircraft was a big deal for me.
Yeah.
And then I was actually able to command.
So during your, during the time after Panama, where did you go from there?
Okay, so after Panama, so now I'm a senior captain at this point. And I commanded an aviation company as a senior captain. Normally commands in aviation at the time went to majors.
Okay.
So I was able to get my command out of the way.
Yeah.
And so we were experimenting in the Army with functional areas, a second area specialty for an individual. So you could single track or dual track. My year group was required to dual track, so you had to go do something else. And so that's when I became a 54. And 54 is systems automation.
Okay.
So I went straight from Panama to Fort Gordon, Georgia. That's where the communication school is.
Okay.
And there I learned how to work on computers. And so I learned how to code on computers. I could code in Ada,
Yeah.
which doesn't exist anymore. But this is back in the early stages of computers. And when we had the big mainframes and all that. So I worked with computers from aviation.
That's a big
So
switch.
I went to Fort Gordon. I was trained up at Fort Gordon. Then I asked for an assignment at Fort Hood because my family was in Fort Hood.
Okay.
So I got assigned to Fort Hood to the Director of Information Management, DOIM, in Fort Hood, Texas. And that's where I got promoted to major.
Wow.
Yeah. So after that, let me just go over. So then I went back because I was dual tracking. So then I went over to First Cab and I interviewed for an opportunity to participate as a battalion executive officer in an aviation battalion. So I did my interview, they accepted me, so I became the battalion XO for the 4th of the 227th Aviation, First Cab. And in that assignment, that's when Somalia was the only show in town. And we sent our OH-58 Deltas, my battalion, a platoon of our guys we sent down to Somalia to support the Somalia mission. And that's when all that Black Hawk down and all that stuff happened.
Right. That too.
So that was out of my unit.
So that particular aircraft, tell me about that.
The Delta?
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause that's a
okay.
little different from
Yeah.
flying.
So you know, it's the Kiowa, and basically it's a Bell Ranger, modified for the Army, and it has a special camera at the very top, right above the rotor system.
Okay.
There's a special camera right above the rotor system. So the idea was that you could actually come to the tree level, and with the camera you could actually see. And they could lace targets for the Apaches, or the Cobras at that time as well. They could lace the targets and basically not be exposed. So that was a very good idea that they came up with on the OH-58 Deltas.
Then how much flying were you doing at that time?
I was in an executive officer position, so I was doing the minimum required to maintain my, my status current, because you have to have your currency. So I wasn't flying a lot, and I was pretty much on the ship role.
But that was your third aircraft type, I guess.
That's right. Well, we had the OH-58 Deltas, we had UH-1s, we had Blackhawks too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was the battalion XO for the
for all of them?
Yes, for all of them.
Okay. Did you fly all of them?
No, I only flew right now. The OH-58 is all I flew at that time.
So how did you communicate with loved ones while you were either deployed or stationed overseas when your family wasn't with you? How did you communicate?
Okay, so my first deployment was El Salvador, and this is, we're talking now in 1985. And so, as you know, communications is not as enhanced as it is today. And so you basically communicated through what's called high-frequency radio. And so in our aircraft, we're all adapted with this high-frequency radio. So you have to climb up to about 2,000 feet above ground level. and you were able to communicate back to the United States with that radio. And so, probably once a month, maybe if that, we try to see if we can get a hold of our family members. They were required to go to a military installation where the G6, the communications folks who had the radio, and then you could coordinate ahead of time. Because basically you coordinated by writing letters.
Yeah.
That's how it was. So, you'd write a letter and get a letter a week later.
Yeah, it's interesting that, 20 years or 15 years after Vietnam, you're still communicating in the same way that they were in Vietnam.
So letters was the primary, and then the high frequency radio was our ultimate.
So how did you deal with stress during your career? What did you do?
She was biceps on the
Right.
side.
Yeah.
But I still do.
I figured that was going to come up.
And I got my grandkids here too, so we do 90 push-ups every day. That's gonna.
How many?
We do 90.
Okay.
Because they're still young and growing up. But no, you have to do push-ups.
Right.
Or you find a loved one like my wife Jill,
Yeah.
that she can calm me down and stroke me and tell me, hey, she can tell me I'm starting to spin out of control. Whatever.
Right.
So, but no, exercise is number one. Running, I do a lot of running, and then a lot of weightlifting. Try to stay calm.
So what kind of challenges did your being away from home create for those at home?
Well, when I first came back from El Salvador, I came to say hello to my son. He didn't want to even let me hold him because he didn't even recognize me.
Right.
He didn't know who I was.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, I'm your dad,
Right.
Come on, Anthony, get with it. But over time, once they see you every day, they'll learn to accept you. So that was hard though, because you're in a situation where you start thinking about family. So when you're in your aircraft, we have our machine gunners on our aircraft, and as the pilot in command, you have to give the okay for them to squeeze the trigger. And so when you're going into a hot landing zone and you're giving the okay to squeeze the trigger, I started later on thinking about, man, we're squeezing the trigger, we're shooting, we're killing other human beings who also have a mother, have a father, may have a child, may have a wife. And, I was trained not to think that way. And then afterwards, you start thinking about that and you start, man, my goodness, I did this. And you have to convince yourself that you're the one that's in the right. Because you remember that person that you're shooting at, they think they're in the right.
Right.
So who's the right one? You know what I mean? Well, it depends on what your government tells you. So it's a difficult situation.
So when did you leave the military? What year did you leave?
Right, I left in 2007. So after I was working as a computer guy, then I went back to aviation, right? And then I got assigned to the Pentagon. Because everybody said if you're going to have a successful career, you got to do a tour of the Pentagon.
Okay.
So they talked me into doing that. And once I was in the Pentagon, I met a lot of contacts because that's where all the heavy hitters are.
Right.
And President Clinton was the president at the time, and he had this big thing of anti-drug going on.
Oh yeah. Yes.
So I wanted to get into the anti-drug world. And so when I finished my assignment in the Pentagon, I got promoted to lieutenant colonel in 1996.
Oh, okay.
And I asked for an assignment in Bolivia. And there was three main hubs for the counter-drug warfare. It's Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru.
Right.
So when my time to rotate came in, the billet in Bolivia opened up. So I said, hey, I'll take that assignment. Of course, I had to go look at the map to see where Bolivia was. But I said, I'll take it. Because I knew that.
South of somewhere.
Right, exactly. And so it's in South America. And, I did 3 years as an aviator there, flew a bunch of hours.
Still active duty.
Active duty lieutenant colonel.
Okay.
Flying UH-1s. And I was basically an advisor to the Bolivian Air Force and flying counter-drug missions and helping teaching them how to do counter-drug missions.
Somebody that, a lieutenant colonel, that's kind of high rank to be.
It's a diplomatic position.
I see.
So you have to have a certain level, certain status to be able to get into those positions. Like I had to go interview with the State Department, I had to interview the Pentagon to be selected for the position. They're all lieutenant colonel positions for aviators because it's diplomatic.
Right.
And so, you have to go down there on diplomatic status when you go down there. you work for the U.S. ambassador in that country. And so that's who my boss was. But the aviation assets that we had belonged to the State Department. So my first line supervisor was a State Department employee. And so,
How'd that work?
yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know how you're talking about working for two different bosses.
Right.
You know, you have, and then they're in opposition of each other.
Right.
So it required a lot of skill, agility, and
Yeah.
ability to deal with that. But it was a great
That's
mission.
why you need to be diplomatic staff.
That's right. You have to be diplomatic within the U.S. Embassy itself, and the country team is what we call the country team,
Right.
which is, you know, an assembly of CIA, DEA, you know, the military.
Right.
And so it was interesting. It was good. We did a lot of work out there in terms of fighting the drug. And so we did aerial eradication, manual eradication, eradicating the drugs that were being grown as crop in those countries. And then we did a lot of intersections with the DEA. So this is basically, you know, assaulting on the target.
Right.
That's getting ready to transport drugs, come in with DEA agents and what they call the UTA, which was the Bolivian force that DEA was training to assault the target.
And you did that for 3 years?
Did that for 3
So
years.
what years were those?
That's 96 to 99.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I was getting a little ahead of myself. What did you do after Bolivia?
So
How do you top that?
Yeah, well, no, that's pretty high up there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, your previous interviewer, he said that everybody reaches a peak at a certain level.
Yes.
I had reached my peak.
I see.
I was
Okay.
pretty much done with that kind of stuff. And
Yeah, yeah.
so I was in aviation, and I asked to go to California.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to be assigned to California. I had personal reasons for it.
Okay.
And so they were like, wait a minute, we don't have an aviation assignment for you in California, and in about a year, you're going to be coming up for promotion to 06.
Right.
So California is not a good move for you. And I said, hey, I just finished this mission. I want to go to California. Because I wanted to be where my children were. My children were in California.
Okay.
And so they reassigned me, and they warned me, and said, you know, this is it. I said, I'm good. So I went to California, and I was the Inspector General over at the Defense Language Institute.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, in BLI, Monterey, California.
Wow.
Yeah, and so what they did was they grandfathered me into a program called Foreign Area Officer.
Right.
So I was already a lieutenant, colonel. You come into that program as a captain.
Oh,
But
wow.
I came into it as a lieutenant colonel.
Yeah.
So I told them, look, I'm fine with everything, you know, I realize I'm not going to get promoted, but I want to get my master's degree. So they told me, yes, we'll do that. So I went to the Naval Postgraduate School,
Okay.
which is in Monterey, California also.
Right.
And I did the Navy, so that's how I got my master's degree, the Naval
Uh-huh.
Postgraduate School
Is that right? And what was your master's degree in?
in National Security Affairs.
Okay. All right.
And then I became a Foreign Area Officer. And then from that point forward until I retired in 2007, it was all Foreign Area Officers.
And what did those duties? What are the duties of a foreign area officer entail?
Yeah, okay, so my first assignment right after that was at the Defense Language Institute. So my duties there was to serve as the Inspector General.
Okay.
So that was my first duties as a Foreign Area Officer.
I see.
However, that wasn't specifically Foreign Area Officer. So my next assignment now, I could ask where I wanted to go. And so I wanted to go to Puerto Rico.
Okay.
So the United States Army South was located in Puerto Rico. They
Okay.
were in Panama, and then with the Carter Treaty in Panama,
Right.
we had to get the Panama Canal up, so they moved the Army unit from Panama to Puerto Rico, specifically talking about the Army
Yes.
from the South.
Yes.
And so they were in Puerto Rico, so I said, oh, this is an opportunity for me to go to Puerto Rico. So I asked for the assignment to Puerto Rico, and I assigned to Puerto Rico. Then when I got to Puerto Rico, General Valenzuela was our commanding general, and so he called me in and interviewed me and said, I want you to be my political advisor, political military advisor. So I said, roger that. And so I served as a political military advisor. So what I did as an advisor is I would coordinate for him to meet with the commanding generals of all of our partner armies. So within Southern Command, we have 32 countries. And of those 32 countries, we were coordinating specific army-to-army actions with our partners. idea behind that is called security cooperation. Security cooperation is, let's see if we can talk our partner army to do more so that we don't have to deploy our soldiers. So like, for instance, like humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, peacekeeping operations, those kind of things.
Right.
So that the U.S. Army can focus on the big stuff, Iraq, Afghanistan. We can get our partners to come in, provide their troops to do what we did not consider the big stuff, which was disaster, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, peacekeeping operations.
Right.
And use their troops to do those things. So we have to sell them our equipment, we have to train them on our equipment. You know, we have to get that relationship strong so that we could have confidence in each other, to trust each other. That was a very, very good thing. So my job was coordinating what we were going to talk about and to who. When we went to all of the embassies in our countries. So we travel, I travel all over the world. And so primarily my focus was Central and South America.
You had a really diverse career.
Yes.
Really diverse. And so after your time in Puerto Rico, where you went then?
So our organization was in Puerto Rico, and there was a lot of protests going on in Puerto Rico, anti-military, anti-U.S. protests in Puerto Rico by this small little group. And so the commander at the time, General Valenzuela, decided he wanted to move to San Antonio. He's from San Antonio. He knows Fort Sam really good. He was really, really good friends with General Shinseki, who was the chief of staff in the Army at the time. And so General Shinseki said, okay, we'll move you to Fort Sam, Houston, Texas. So at the time, my youngest son, my grandkid's father, was a high school senior. So the organization completely moved from Puerto Rico to San Antonio, Texas, and I stayed back as the rear detachment commander until my son graduated from high school. Once he graduated from high school, then I reassigned from Puerto Rico to Fort Sam Houston. And then I retired in 2000. That was in 2005. I retired in 2007. For the 2 years that I retired.
Well, that's kind of a whole life in and of itself, the military career. So what did you do after the military?
So after the military, the first thing I did is I started selling real estate, royalty real estate when I got here.
Really?
Yeah. Started making a lot of money there. And then I got called from one of my friends who followed me in the assignment that I was in. And he said that I needed my help and that it really could use my help. So he asked if I would come back to the office. So he did a contract, and I was hired on to a contract right a year later after I retired.
The contract?
To contract to the U.S. Army South as a political military advisor.
Oh, so you went back.
I went back to what I was
But as a civilian?
As a civilian, yes. And then after that, they liked what I was doing, so they made a civilian position for me. So now I went from contracting to civil service.
Right.
But I continue doing the same thing. And so what I'm doing is I manage a program now. It's called the Military Personnel Exchange Program.
Okay.
It's very, very much like a student exchange program, except that we're exchanging military people.
Huh.
So, like for instance, at Fort Sam Houston, where I work, I was able to create a position for general officer. So our deputy commanding general at Army South is a general from the Army. And I rotate that position. Every 2 years I bring in a different general from a different army to serve in a U.S. Army unit as a U.S. Army participant. But he's from a foreign army. And I also use his expertise to advise our commander when he goes on his trips to the different countries, because he's very familiar with the military culture, the military traditions, customs, and the courtesies.
Yes.
And so he can get him on board, and that helps the relationship building that we're trying to do as we ask our partners to step it up and do more in international affairs.
Wow. Well, how long did you serve in the military?
27 years.
And you retired as a...
Lieutenant Colonel.
Okay. And then as a
Civil service.
civil servant.
I'm still doing it right now.
You're still doing it right
Still
now.
in civil
So,
service right now. I'm
what
going to retire in
would-
2 years.
Okay, and what would your civil service rank equate to?
About Lieutenant Colonel. About the same.
About the same? And your...
Pays good, I'm not complaining.
And you're still not complaining about the pay. You
No,
started
you
not
can't.
complaining, you're still not.
Listen, I got my first paycheck, okay? When I joined the Army,
Yeah.
right? I told you that we graduated UTA.
Uh,
From the graduation, went over to the military science department. We put on our uniform, right? Well, I had on underneath, right? Did our commissioning ceremony. I went on leave for 30 days, right? I hadn't worked a day in the United States Army. And they let me go on leave for 30 days. I got my first paycheck. I hadn't worked a day in the Army. It was $800. I had never seen that much money in my whole life. $800, I thought I was rich. You know, and so I'm like, you know, this Army thing's pretty good. I don't have to do anything, and I still get paid. Yeah, so it worked out pretty good. That's why I did it for 27 years. And I continue. I'm what they call a soldier for life. I'm a soldier for life. I'm still serving the military in a different capacity.
So, what medals or citations were you awarded during your service? Just the big ones.
Yeah.
I know there's.
Well, it's really not so much the big ones. It's the ones that really mean the most.
Yeah, let's talk about those.
The ones that mean the most to you.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you, I was a young captain. No, I'm sorry, I was a first lieutenant.
Okay.
I was a first lieutenant, and I was a battery XO, because in field artillery they call their companies batteries.
Okay.
But so I was a battery XO, and my commander was a captain. And they have this Order of St. Barbara medal
Yes.
that you get to wear with your dress blues.
Okay.
You know, nice little medal. And I was awarded the Order of St. Barbara as a field artilleryman over my company commander, who was a captain and a commander at the time, and I was just like so.
Right.
But the battalion commanders are the one that decides who's going to get the award. And so I was awarded the award, and I was just complete. Now, that award doesn't even go on your records. Okay, that does not go on your ORB or anything. But it is the most prestigious award that I've ever received, because it made me feel so good about what I was doing, you know, for my country.
You know where I first heard of that award?
No.
From your mentor.
Oh, is that right?
Orlando Reyes.
Orlando, did he get it too?
Yes, he did.
Oh, he must have done something right then. So that's not bad, doing something right at least once in his life.
Right.
No, man, it's a good friend of mine. I love him.
I understand, but I've heard of that
He's a big
before.
mentor, man. He's shaped my life.
Yeah.
But I'm glad he got it, because I can tell you one of the things that you know he shares with me is that hard work has its payoffs.
Yes.
And I got that as a first lieutenant.
Yeah.
It was just something else. And it tops really almost everything else that I've gotten, really. I mean, it just does, because the next award that I really feel proud about was that I was inducted into the Hall of Honor at UTA University. And by the way, I don't know if you can see that right there. I am hardcore UTA Maverick. You know, I love my school.
Yeah.
It's the best thing that ever happened to me. And my gosh, you know, I'm so thankful for all the people that I met. I'm thankful for all the people that helped me along the way, and all the friendships that I developed. Because I don't really have friends, I have family.
Yes.
Everybody becomes family members to me.
Right.
And they are a part of my family. And you know, to this day, as you know, we continue to be friends. And we'll see each other on occasion. One of my buddies, Andy, Orlando, Lester, Larry, they're doing something and they invite me. That's what it's will get. That's for sure. I'm gonna make it priority.
And it's always on Facebook.
That's right. My wife's big on Facebook also.
So, are there any memories that you have that make you laugh? Anything that's funny that happened during
Well,
your
the biggest one I think that makes me laugh is when we were at a bonfire at UTA. You know, we used to have a football team at UTA back in the day. And
Yes.
anyway, so we're at this bonfire, right? And you know, we were pretty much low income, you know, poor kids. But we went to a university that kind of attracted wealthy kids.
Oh, okay.
And so there was this fraternity that had the nicest cars and these guys, they had the audacity to bring out a brand new leather couch, 3-seater, plush, beautiful thing, and they set that thing right down in front of the bonfire, and they're blocking everybody's view. And so Orlando started looking at me and he says, "Hey, you know what? I think that couch is going on fire." And so I said, "Roger that." Salute, right? And move on, right? So I said, "Hey guys, couch is going in the fire." "Wow, this couch cost $3,000. You once bought it out here. Hey, you bought it out here, now it's going in the fire." And they didn't think it was going to go in the fire. So we said, "Yeah, it's going in the fire." And so there was about 10, 15 of us, 10, 15 of them. And next thing you know, it turned into a big rumble. It was a rumble in the jungle, man. Fists were flying, people were kicking, biting. I mean, doing whatever you can. And I just want to say, I can proudly say, and I tell you this, Orlando, a chair made it into the fire. Because we put that down the chair. Now, there were some consequences for that behavior.
Oh, okay.
Because the Maverick police came.
Oh, yeah.
And then we all had to act all innocent and everything like that. And everything was fine until Orlando punched the other guy right in the face right in front of the police officer. That's when things went down.
Yeah.
But we overcame.
Yeah, yeah.
But that just makes me laugh because it's so funny.
And
We didn't realize that.
it's the first time I've heard this story.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I got many more I can tell you.
Yeah, we may do that offline. So did you experience any discrimination while you served in your career? Did you?
So discrimination exists. That's not
Sure.
a made-up term.
Sure.
However, coming out of UTA, I don't know. UTA is a pretty liberal school.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my professors were very liberal.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost seemed like they were focused on convincing me, that I was disadvantaged somehow because of my color of my skin. So they kept talking about different programs, but my father taught me something a little different. And it was like, it doesn't matter what color of skin is, it's how much you work.
Right.
And so what I did was to avoid discrimination, because it existed, especially in aviation, when I was one of the few Hispanic Puerto Ricans in aviation world back in the time that I did.
Sure.
And so to avoid that, you work hard. And you serve as an example to others. And your leaders will see how hard you work. Then they won't care what color your skin is. But if you fall into this victim mentality, which is something that unfortunately, a lot of people try to present to you to make you convince you that you're the victim of a system. And you're not the victim of a system if you go in it and work hard. And get serious about it and get it done. And you try to overachieve. So there's this one group that I would not associate with. I'll give you an example. Right when I came in the Army, it's the best example because it's the first one that popped up to me when I came out of UTA. If my standard was like up here, coming out of UTA being a Jody. The standards of a Jody is at the top. You're not going to find anything lower than that. It's perfection.
Right.
So I'm in basic, field artillery course, and we're hanging out, talking, and we're getting ready to do PT, because we do PT in the morning, every morning, right? And so now it's time to do the PT test. And so I'm with this group, and they're all looking to see what the passing score was to be able to pass the PT test. And I'm with the wrong group. You know what I mean? I'm looking at the group saying, hey, what does it take to get 100 points? How many push-ups do I have to do to get 100 points? Because 100 points is the maximum you can score for an event on the PT test. So I quickly moved from one group to another group saying, no, man, I'm not with you guys.
Yeah.
You want to just pass. That's not me.
Right.
I want to know, what do I need to achieve 100%? And that's how I pursued my career in my life was, I'm going to be the best at whatever. If they set me out to cut grass, I'll tell you a little story about my son, my grandkid's dad. He used to cut my grass, and I used to pay him $35 to do that tour. And one time, after the attack at 9/11 in 2001, my son wanted to be a soldier and wanted to join the Army. He wanted to go to the 82nd Airborne Division. I wanted to go fight for my country. And I said, no, that's great. But what happened was he got there early, and so they have what's called snowbirding.
Yes.
Well, they'll give you little tasks to do because you're just sitting around doing nothing. And so I was still in the active service at the time, and they asked me to go out and cut the grass. And he was so upset about that. So he called me and he said, Dad, I need you to use your rank. You need to call this captain here and trying to tell me I got to go cut grass. And I said, son, the captain told you to go cut grass? He goes, yeah, can you believe it? I said, yeah, go out there and cut the grass. He said, but Bob, I came here to fight for my country. I didn't come over here to cut grass. I said, son, whatever task the Army gives you, that's the one you're going to do to the maximum of your ability. You're going to go cut grass better than anybody else has cut grass before. And I said, and then look at it this way, son. I paid you $35. The Army's going to give you $35. Get out there and cut grass.
Was he disappointed with that answer?
No, when he cut that grass,
Great.
yes, he could.
Okay.
And my son's very successful, and you can see, like I said, my grandkids, I'm very proud of them.
Yes.
He's done great. And he was in the 82nd. Matter of fact, Brandon over here was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
All right, okay.
Well, my son was a member of the 82nd Air
All right.
Force. Yes.
So is there anyone who you served with specifically who influenced you?
That I served with?
Yeah.
Yes, there was. General Miles.
Mhm.
James Miles.
Mhm.
He was the greatest American. I mean, this guy was amazing. He changed my life in terms of how I conducted myself. Because trying to be the best at everything that you do in your career can make you feel like a prima donna, so to speak. And that's kind of how I was going around, thought I was the best, you know. And then I wouldn't treat all people the same way. I was treating people differently. And he taught me, no, you got to treat the janitor just as good as you got to treat the commanding general. From top to bottom, you treat everybody with dignity, respect, and they'll respect you for that. And he changed my life because I wasn't that way before. I thought I was the baddest thing since sliced bread, you know what I mean? And you were lucky to get to know me. And now, I'm not that way anymore. I'm lucky to get to know all of you guys. You know, it's your blessing in my life.
Right.
And that man changed my life forever. Because I realized that no matter how smart you are, no matter how dumb you are, you're still a precious human being. And that life is precious. You gotta treat everybody the same. Don't treat people different because of whatever. So General Miles, he was my battalion commander, and he's the one that interviewed me to become the battalion Axel under him when he got his battalion command in the 1st Cav Division, 42227 Aviation Battalion. And he told me, he said, Axel, you've been the best XO I could ever have. And if I ever get a brigade, I want you to be my brigade XO. So when I was out doing my mission in Bolivia, where I got promoted to Lieutenant Colonel in 96, that man found me and called me. He was in Korea getting ready to get his brigade, and he goes, I want you to be my brigade XO. Of course, in Korea, it was really, I mean, it's a great mission and all that, but it wasn't a real world mission at the time.
Right.
And I was doing counter drugs, which was a real world mission at the time. So I had to weigh that, and I told him, I really appreciate you so much for calling me and thinking of me, you know, to serve under your leadership once again. But I respectfully decline. I'm in a real world operational mission. This is where I feel my services are getting. So I declined that opportunity.
Did he remind you why you burned that couch?
Well, to be honest, no, that reminds me of that.
The reason why I asked
Because Orlando
is because you're the best
of
well, you're the best of everything. And you're realizing that you're the best of everything. And you're beginning to treat people differently.
Yeah.
And then there's this leather couch
Yeah,
sitting out there. And
but remember, it's chronological. So,
Yes.
yeah, so, no, I just think of Orlando when I think of that couch. Because those four guys, I mean, it was a nice couch. And I want to tell you something, but you should have seen the fire, man. The fire, the bonfire really exploded. It was a nice fire.
Okay.
So it made for a nice fire.
Are you involved in any veterans organizations presently?
Well, you know, part of the UTA Maverick Cadet Council. I'm also a member of the Sociedad Cultural Hispanoamericana. My parents have been a part of that organization. It's a cultural Hispanic American organization. It's in Fort Hood, Texas.
Okay.
And so I participate with them every time they ask me to go down. I'll MC projects for them.
Oh, right.
I'll just donate my services to them at no charge and support the organization promoting the Hispanic culture among our society. And then, of course, you know, all the military organizations, aviation, I'm part of that. And support the local American Legion. Remember the American Legion?
Oh, okay.
Right in town, right up the street from here.
Okay.
Supporting our veterans and anybody that can.
And what, if anything, reminds you of your time in military service?
What reminds me, well, I go to work every day.
Yeah.
And I work with the military, so it's funny
Did
because...
anything remind you of something else you did in your past?
So the interesting part of this, I think, and Andy probably experienced some of this when he was doing LTC, but I developed some of these officers, they're in the foreign area officer program, and now they're the leaders. And you get to, so it's a different thing when you're serving as the leader for somebody as the mentor. And then now that young person becomes now the leader, you know? It's interesting because I always kid my boss right now because I used to be his boss. Now he's my boss.
Interesting.
That's right. So the colonel that I worked for, you know, was a young major, senior captain, young major when I met him, shaped him, informed him. And now he came back to the organization. Now he is my boss because he's, you know, it's run by the military.
Yeah.
So I get to work for him now.
Yeah.
So it's payback time for him.
So if you had to serve in the Army all over again, or if you had the choice to serve in the Army all over again, would you do it?
Yeah, so I think that that's a good question because my initial answer is absolutely, of course. But things are changing in this country, and I'm saddened by some of the changes in this country. So of course I would when I was growing up, you know what I mean, where things were the way they were when I was growing up. But our country's very, very different now. And I'm totally against the socialist type of government. And our country's moving in that direction. And that saddens me deeply. And so if this was a socialist nation, would I serve? Well, it's a good thing I don't have to answer that because I paid my dues are paid before. And so all I'm going to do is stay alive and try to change the lives of people around me as best I can, make it as pleasant and wonderful as I can. And that's not something I have to worry about. But I just hope that what we do in terms of trying to shape the young leadership nowadays, hope that we don't move in that direction. But we're in that direction right now. This is good.
Okay. And how often do you return to campus, and what do you think of the changes?
I think the campus is marvelous. I'm very proud. I'll show you again, UTA. I wear my, you know what I mean? I'm representing her, but I'm very proud of my school. My wife went to Texas Tech, and we have this challenge all the time about Tech and UTA. And she goes, well, your school's not football team. I said, but we have Anyways,
and at one time they were a darn good one.
They were a darn good one, that's right. And Dexter Bussey, I don't know if you remember him, but he made the pros too from as one of our running backs.
Is that right?
Yeah, but in terms of going back to the school, yes. So you know, I do the Hall of Honor. The last time I went, the last inductee was it? I'm trying. No, so the last inductee was Larry, and so we couldn't do Larry because Larry. It was COVID, and so they didn't really. It was like virtual or something like that. Yeah. And we tried to get on, and we couldn't get on. But I normally go to all of them, and I went to Andy's. Yeah, I think Andy was one before. Yeah, I think he was before Larry. I've been to almost all of them. I go back to the university. They call me and they say, hey, we need to teach leadership class. I'm there. I'll go over and teach leadership.
And you're in the Hall of Honor. Right?
And I'm in the Hall of Honor.
And
I
who?
don't know how that happened.
Yeah, I was going to say. Well, listening to your story, I have a feeling I know. But who nominated you to go into the Hall of Honor? Do you recall?
I'm thinking either Lester or Orlando, one of the two.
Okay.
I'm not real sure which one. Because they were tag teaming on it.
Right.
Trying to keep it a secret.
Oh,
you know, but then they have to send you a little application so that you can fill out your history. Yes. So then you kind of know what's going on. You know what I mean? So but I think it was between Orlando and probably Lester. Yeah, those two.
Yeah. Couldn't be nominated by two better guys.
No, they're awesome Americans. I mean,
President.
listen, everybody, I'm telling you, everybody that I know that graduated from the University of Texas at Austin, everyone's a hero in my mind. I mean, starting with Bunky Bronson, you know Bunky, he's my father-in-law sitting right over there quietly, ex-aviator. These are all great Americans.
Yes, they are.
And they helped shape the organization that I was a part of. They made the organization so good, I have to go to that organization, not that university. Because if that organization would have been another university, I'd end up with that other university. But these guys formed it at this university, the University of Texas. That's what I wanted to be a part of that. And so, the credit that you get out of that is you get a degree coming out of your
Right.
And so it all worked out for me. So I think that every one of our guys is successful. I'm very proud of my great Americans.
Yeah, they are. I agree with you. And what advice do you have for young people going into the military today?
Going in the military, I'm going to tell all the young people every time I get a chance to understand one thing, and that is to be a leader, you have to be a follower. You have to be a good follower. You have to be the best follower. If you can be the best follower, your leadership opportunity is going to appear. So don't even worry about it. Be the best that you can be at the task that you're asked to perform at that time, no matter how simple or how complex. That's what you need to do. And your opportunity to lead will come. But be the best that you can at all times.
Is there anything you'd like to add to this interview that I've not covered?
Well, I want to thank my wife for letting us come into the living room because we were going
raining.
to do this outdoors, and it was blowing, and she was like, "Oh, I didn't clean the house," you know. So. But no, my wife's been very supportive of me. And,
Yes.
and I love her. My grandkids, you know, of course, our two friends right over here to your right, Steve. Thank you guys. Thank you for what you're doing. I want to thank you personally because what you're doing is showcasing the veterans, you know, that graduated from UTA or attended UTA, and nobody else is doing that. You're doing that, and if it wasn't for you, nobody would know about it. So I really take this opportunity to thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you very much, and it's been my pleasure. And thank you for having us in your home, and thank you for taking the time to do the interview. Thank you for your service, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Okay, we'll see each other again. You got it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
He said it was gonna be short.
I was trying to make it short, but it kept on time.
Yeah.